Welcome, everyone, to the Jake Dunlap Show. This is your weekly dose of real success stories from entrepreneurs, athletes, celebrities, CEOs, and the people that you love. If you've ever wondered what makes people tick, what are the weird things that happened to them in their past that help to shape the people that they've became, every Thursday at 8 a.m. Eastern, you can tune in and get exactly that. The behind the scenes, not the typical behind the scenes, but the real stories that shaped some of the people that you know, love, and follow. All right, welcome everyone to another episode of the Jake Dunlap Show. Today's guest, I have 5 pages of notes, right? So if that tells you just the depth that we could get into on this conversation, because this gentleman has been doing this for a long time. With a life that seems straight out of a novel, our guest today is a man that personifies success over adversity. At the age of 17, he's a dyslexic high school dropout, and he met Paul Bragg, a 93-year-old man that inspired him to break through his perceived limitations and later on help him to do the same for others. He developed his own way of doing things, which he continues to share through his institute that offers 72, that's a lot, different courses. The most advanced, and this is crazy, I'll have to ask you about this, a 21-year correspondence course. His programs are designed to assist individuals, organizations to empower and activate the potential within the 7 areas of their life. Everyone, join me in welcoming Mr. John Demartini. John, thank you for joining me today.
Thank you. Thank you.
And he's joining us from a ship in Copenhagen, FYI as well too. So he has a ship, that he travels around on. And define ship for me, by the way. Like when we think ship here, I've got like a lot of different like ideas in my head.
You mean like the size or the shape or?
Yeah, what is a ship? Because at first when I hear ship, like the word just ship, I think like battleship, which obviously you're not on a battleship as a part of this.
No, I live on a ship called the World. That's the title.
Oh, I love it.
And it's about 675 feet long.
Woo!
It's about 109 foot wide, and it's 12 stories high. And I've been living on here for 21 years.
I love it.
November.
I love it.
And so I've been sailing around the world for a long time.
I love it. We'll get into like your favorite places too. We were talking before just about, his Houston office. He's like, yeah, I'm there for 30 minutes to an hour every year as well. So he's living the life. So we're going to go through the story so all of you can figure out how to live on your ship for 21 years as well. So this is going to be a good one. So like we do with every episode, we kind of go back to the origin and the beginning, not just origin story of you as a successful, I guess guru. I guess guru is like a version of a guru, I think is a fair assessment here. So we're going to go back to the early days in Houston.
Well,
you'll take it, or
I just like to call myself. I'm just an inspired educator. That's what I like to call myself.
Inspired educator. All right, we'll go with that. So, born on Thanksgiving Day. So this is back in Houston, a few years ago. Look, you had to overcome quite a bit. You were born in Houston, early age, you had leg braces, dyslexia, some other things as well too. Again, like very early, I also read, had a teacher that was, not the most positive early. How did you think about some of those things? And what are some of like your early memories, that you have about kind of growing up in Houston, your parents, different things that happened in those stages? Because again, like you were going through a lot, very early in life. And, by 17, again, you kind of dropped out for a little bit as well. So talk maybe about those kind of formative years and what are some of the big lessons that, you took away, because you certainly had to experience quite a bit.
Well, when I was born in 1954, I had a positioning in the womb that was, I guess, awkward. And I had my arm and leg turned inward. And so we didn't really realize it, or my parents didn't realize it until I was trying to stand up. Then they realized my foot was turned in and my arm was turned in. They saw some of it, but they didn't realize how significant it was. So I had to wear braces from about a year and a half to 4 on my arm and leg on the left side. And of course, when you wear big clunky braces, a lot of kids avoid you. And, it's like a Forrest Gump kind of thing. And I just wanted to be out of those. I didn't like being constrained. And I think that had an impact on my life because I travel. I've traveled over 20 million miles in flights, and I travel full time, sailing. So I think that had something to do with me wanting to be free to travel. That had probably an impact. I also, by a year and a half old, I also started going to a speech pathologist because I wasn't using my mouth properly. And I had to wear buttons and strings in my mouth and do all these exercises. I remember when I was a kid. When I got to be about 6, I believe, I started elementary school. And no matter what I did, it wasn't working on reading. My speech and my reading and my comprehension and things weren't working. I tend to write backwards like this with my hand and because of my arm. And no matter what I did, I didn't read. So I started normal reading, went to repeatable reading. I finally had to wear a dunce cap. They actually wore a dunce cap in 1960, 61. I had to face a window with a guy named Darrell Dalrymple. I always wondered what happened to him.
I love how you remember his name. I find that a lot, that we tend to remember those types of people.
I would give him a hug today because we sat together staring out the window with a dunce cap on. But the teacher finally invited my parents to the school and said, I'm afraid your son is not going to be able to read, not going to be able to write effectively, probably won't go very far and won't amount to anything. But if I were you, I'd get him into sports. Because once I got out of the braces at 4, all I wanted to do was run. Run. I was like a fast runner. So she said, put him into sports or track or something. He's gonna excel somewhere. That'll be where it is. So I made it through elementary school with the help of the smartest kids. And I really think that was magnificent because today I'm kind of known for the questions I ask people. And I consult with people and I develop methodologies based on questions. And I learned to ask questions at that age, starting at 7 on up to 12. And I would ask the smartest kids, what did you get out of the class? And I would get enough information to pass school. And that worked until I was 6th grade, until I was 12 years old. I was able to sort of pass. Then my parents moved from Houston, Texas to Richmond, Texas, age 12. When I started school that summer, I didn't have a bunch of smart kids. It's a low socioeconomic area. We lived in a real low socioeconomic kind of environment. And I failed. So I dropped out of school by the time I was 13 and was a street kid. So I remember living in a bowling alley. I remember living in a park. I remember living in cars. In those days, they didn't lock cars. You could find a car anywhere and sleep.
Yeah.
But I lived in a diner, a 24-hour diner, all kind of places, and had odd jobs and stuff. I was picking up surfing at age 9. And by the time I was 13, I picked up surfing again. I wanted to go surfing because I could do sports. And Texas wasn't the surf capital.
Yeah.
I hitchhiked. I took a surfboard and I hitchhiked from Houston, Texas out to LA, out to Huntington Beach, California, and hitchhiked across America. But I was very young. I was already, hopping trains and hitchhiking by the time I was young. Riding bicycles 35 miles by the time I was 9. I was hopping trains at 12, 13. I was hitchhiking everywhere.
Wow.
So it wasn't anything.
Those are the days.
Across America.
Those are the days. My dad did the same thing at like 4. My dad did the same thing. It's like insane to think about. My dad, I think, and his brother, when they were like 15 or 16, hitchhiked from Iowa to like LA or something. It's like, what?
Yeah, and I met some amazing people. I had the opportunity to meet Howard Hughes. I got to meet Timothy Leary. Wow. I got to meet Ted Nugent. I got to meet Jimi Hendrix. I got to meet some of the characters along the way. But then I made it to Los Angeles and Huntington Beach and down into Mexico. That summer I hitchhiked down to Mexico, went on an adventure down there, got into the country without documents and got out of the country without documents. There wasn't a wall from Trump then. And
yeah.
So I made it at 15. I made it over to Hawaii, and I socially climbed. I lived under a bridge first, then a park bench, then a bathroom, abandoned car, and finally a tent. And I was a big wave surfer. a long-haired hippie surfer guy with a beard. And that worked until I was 17. I got in some surf movies. I got in surf books, surf magazines and stuff. Did pretty good there, wrote big waves. And then I almost died at 17. And in the recovery of that, I was led to that little health food, this little Sunset Recreation Hall where Paul Bragg was speaking. I was now 17. And he was 93. I thought he was 93 originally, but it turned out he was a little younger than that. He's about 82.
At 17, everyone looks 93.
Well, yeah, but somebody said he was 93, so I just assumed it was. I later found out he was younger, but it doesn't matter. What he said that night changed the course of my life, unquestionably. When he spoke, I never thought I was going to be intelligent until that night I met him. I never thought I was going to be a reader or a writer or a speaker or anything like that. That wasn't my thing. It was surfing. I could stand on a surfboard, but communication wasn't my thing. But that night I thought, after what he said, I thought maybe I could overcome my learning problems and someday become intelligent. And I had a dream that night to become a teacher and learn to read. And I went on a journey from that moment on and never turned back kind of thing. It was one of those things that you just go, I tried to go back to, I flew back to Los Angeles, hitchhiked back to Texas and tried to take a GED and to try to go back to school. And when I tried to go back to school, I failed. I was so determined to overcome that my mom and I made me memorize 30 words a day in a dictionary until my vocabulary was strong enough to pass school. And then I lived in a dictionary and memorized 20,000 words over the next couple of years, 30 words a day, and grew my vocabulary and started reading encyclopedias and dictionaries. Now I've read over 30,660 books. So I've been reading ever since. And I grew my vocabulary to where it is today. And I went on my journey, and anybody who had listened to me, I wanted to share whatever I was learning. And slowly but surely, crowds came. By the time I was at University of Houston, I'd have 150 people a day. Sometimes 400 people would gather around, and I'd start doing talks in the park, and then or wherever people would gather. And I just never stopped. Now I've been in 171 countries speaking, and we have students in every country around the world now. So, if you stay with something and never give up on a dream and do it long enough where everybody else dies out, you get somewhere.
Well, what do you feel like? I mean, again, and obviously then you go on to get your, doctorate as well, your medical degree. What were some lessons, again, like you talked about perseverance a little bit here too, and kind of sticking with it, again, to go from, dropping out, doing the things that that you just mentioned, to then speaking in front of people, were there things that you did to jumpstart that? Because I think with a lot of people that are listening, that either the fear of public speaking or the fear of, putting themselves out there is a real thing. And I don't know if you kind of remember if there were any early things that you did to help you to be more confident or to feel comfortable, starting that journey.
Yeah, the first student I ever had was a 375-pound Afro-American woman that asked me to teach her yoga because I was taking and practicing yoga in the library at where I was going. And she saw me. I was the thinnest person in the school. She was the heaviest, and we attracted like opposites. And she wanted me to teach
this
yoga.
is
I looked
Houston,
at her, no, this is early 70s, 1973.
Yeah.
It was Wharton Junior College. I had to go to school there. I couldn't get into college originally from a GED, so I had to go there. And I was in the library trying to read all day long if I wasn't in class. And she saw me there, and she asked me to teach yoga because I would do yoga, take a break, and do some yoga. And then I had a Persian man ask me to teach a meditation because I was learning meditation and learned that at 17. And so those are my first two students. And my second student is still with me. So 50 years later. And then 17 students got out of a class and they gathered around and asked me to tutor them. And then it just kept growing. Because I guess a lot of students were there because they wanted to party and they had the kids, the parents told them they had to go to school and they weren't sure where they were going. But when I was there, I wanted to learn.
Yeah.
And so I just started to build momentum, and people started recognizing it. They would come and ask me questions because I started excelling. And I didn't care about the parties. I didn't care about anything except learning. And that started to grow, a magnetized people. The biggest challenge I had to speak, it wasn't really a challenge of speaking. I was so enthralled by the idea that somebody would ask me for help. And it was slow and steady, just little incremental numbers of people. I got used to it until I got to professional school. And by the time I was at the University of Houston, I was pre-med, and I was in the Honor Society by then. But I chose not to go to medical. I actually became a chiropractor because I didn't believe that we had an excess of organs or deficiency of drugs. I believed that we had a power within us, a natural, innate healing capacity, you might say, to bring about healing. And I wanted to maximize human awareness and potential, and want to maximize natural abilities to achieve in life. And that was my dream. I wanted to be a teacher, be involved in healing and study philosophy and travel the world and share whatever I've discovered that could help people. That's what my dream was. So I became a chiropractor. And I'm so grateful for that because I was in the top of the class by the time I was going there. And Dr. Kaminsky said, where do you want to go to medical school? I said, I'm not going to medical school. I'm going to chiropractic. She said, what? She said, well, your mind, you're diligent. And I said, yeah, because I believe that the intelligence of the body inside the cells is far greater than our intelligence. And I want to know how to maximize that. And so I chose that pathway. I'm very grateful I did. And that led me on a journey to opening up a practice. And, I started out with this little 970 square foot little office with one assistant. And then I read this book, The Time Trap by Ellen McKinsey. And it taught me how to delegate and to prioritize and stuff. And 18 months later, I had a 5,000 square foot office with 5 doctors, 12 staff members, and had a TV show and was doing media and growing, and we grew faster than anybody in the city, and people wanted to know how it happened. And it just kept growing. They started asking me to speak in all kinds of places. And that just kept growing from city to state to nation to different nations, and now 171 countries.
That's wild. What was the name of the book again?
The Time Trap by Ellen McKinsey.
Time Trap. All right.
Yeah, I've told people about that book since 1982. I bought it in 82.
I love it. Right. Some principles like that. I feel like I talk about, like, the boring advice is usually the right or the best advice, or like things that are like, have stood the test of time versus like silver bullet that I think a lot of us look for.
Jake, can I share some gems that I got from that book that might help somebody if they're in business?
Please do.
So after reading and summarizing and dog-earing and marking the book, I did my own summary of it. And what I did is I decided I'm going to apply it, because knowledge without application and knowledge without organization doesn't lead to where much.
Please, everyone, note that the number of books you read is not a measure of how smart you are. It's what you do with them. So I think it's a great call out. So I made a list of everything that I did in a day over a period of weeks or months. What would I do in a day? I made a list of every single thing I did. I tried to be as honest and integral as I could about what I was doing with my time, from the time I woke up to the time I was sleeping. And I divided it into personal and professional, home and work. And I made this exhaustive list. I mean, it was pages and pages. Then I made 6 columns on a piece of paper. And on that first left column was everything that I did. In the second column, I wrote down, what does it produce per hour? Because if I'm doing something that makes a contribution with a sustainable, fair exchange to another human being, where they're willing enough to pay for that value, then I'm doing something of service. And so what does it produce per hour? And I wrote that to the right on the second column of that list. Every single thing. And there was a lot of zeros. I was doing a lot of stuff that wasn't producing. But there was some things in there. Yeah, but there were some things in there, some action steps in there that I was surprised by, because they were not the ones that I went to all the professional school for. The 10 years of school didn't always lead to the thing that produced the most. I found that me speaking in front of a group of people and engaging people and drawing and magnetizing new patients was the most productive thing I could be doing.
Second was the clinical application in the clinic. So I prioritized everything according to what it produced per hour. And at that time, I then realized I was majoring in minors and minoring in majors. And I was not charging for some things. And I was asking why. Why am I not charging for that? That's my time and it's my expertise. And that helped me charge for some things that I wasn't, and helped me rearrange and prioritize what I was doing. And that was a very, very important exercise, including at home, because I made a decision that I was going to not do certain things at home anymore. I was going to hire somebody to do that so I could be liberated to do higher priority things and not be stuck doing lower priority things. And anytime you do high priority things that inspire you, your day doesn't fill up with low priority distractions that don't, and you raise your self-worth and you increase your productivity. So I did that. In the third column, I wrote down on a 1 to 10 scale, how much meaning does each of these actions give me? So 1 would be low meaning, 10 would be super high meaning. And I want to know what is it that brought tears to my eyes of inspiration doing, down to things that I've made tears to my eyes of sorrow doing. And I reprioritized that list so then I could identify what was most meaningful and most productive. So then I had that, because I wanted to maximize the thing that inspired me to go to work, and also maximize the thing that inspired people to want to get my service. So I wanted to prioritize those, because when you can't wait to go to work and be of service to people, people can't wait to get that service. If you're enthused and inspired and grateful and loving and present and certain what you're doing, you magnetize people who match that. They're inspired to be there. And you get what is called naturally existing economic relationships with people who are engaged and resonant with what you're committed to. The next column, no, the fourth column, was, if I was to delegate this, what would it cost me to delegate this activity? And that's everything, not just salaries, but the full cost of everything that I would delegate. So that would be the space utilization, if they had an office, the equipment, the appreciation, down to the paperclip. I mean, I was very detailed on it. The training process, the time off, the vacations, the bonuses, I mean, everything. I wanted to know, what is it costing me to have that individual do that, to do that action? What would it cost? And then I prioritized that according to spread between that which produces the most per hour in the second column and that which costs if I was to delegate it per hour. And I looked at the spread, and then I reprioritized that. And then the next column I did was, how much time do I actually average day to day spend on that activity? Because sometimes I do something once a week, something once a month, sometimes every day. What was the average time? And I organized it according to time. And the final column, final prioritization, taking in all the variables, I finally prioritized the entire thing. And when I did, I had a completely new list of the absolute most meaningful, most inspiring, most productive things, down to the things I would most likely delegate. And then I layered that into 10 layers on that list, because it's a pretty exhaustive list. And then I put a job description according to that bottom layer and hired somebody with a job description that matched that and liberated me from that. Now, it took me 3 people to get that person, because I wasn't the greatest hire at the time. I think I was the Terminator at the first time. But I took 3 people, I got somebody, and then it was gone. And I lifted myself up and no longer had some of those responsibilities. Then I took the next one and took 2 people to get that. And then the next one. And by then my business, I had more time to go focus on generating patients and more focus on clinical applications. And so then I got busy, and then I needed to hire a doctor. So I hired a doctor, and I expanded my office. And then again, and then more doctors. And I just kept delegating it and hiring it. And literally in 18 months, the operation was from a 5,000 square foot, 5 doctors, 12 staff members, with a video and television station filming out of my place on a daily basis. Every time I was practicing, we filmed it on a daily basis, went on live TV on clinical cases. And then we had, a delegation, and I had live presentations going in. And it was just amazing what happens when you prioritize and delegate and do what you're inspired and feel called to do in life. And you give other people the opportunity to do what they love doing. And I learned to hire more effectively according to people's values, because no one goes to work for the sake of a company. They go to work to fulfill what they value most. So if you can find people and know what their values are, and I developed a hierarchy of value determining process, which is on my website today for people that's free. And I hired people according to what their values are. So the job description was engaging to them. And I made sure that there's a science of how to do that. I got people that wanted to do it, so I didn't have to micromanage and motivate people, because motivation is a symptom, never a solution for businesses. And you want people that are intrinsically driven and called to do what they love doing, and not having to be motivated and micromanaged and pushed uphill because they're not engaged. So engagement is what I focused on. And I surrounded myself with people to do what they love doing, so I could be freed to go and speak and to do the clinical applications. Then I prioritized my patients and only worked with the highest priority, most influential, and delegated the rest to the other docs. And then I just kept leveraging and growing the brand until people want to know, how did you do that? And I got speaking opportunities, not only in my industry, but other health professional industries, and then other industries, and it just kept growing. And then I was speaking to large companies, IBM and, Oppenheimer, and you name it. It just kept growing. And I was in the health profession, but I said that I wanted to do health professioning for 5 years, and then I wanted to be traveling around the world speaking. So that was all planned. It was all part of a master plan that I wrote out. I had probably the largest master plan you've ever met of how I wanted my life, and live by design, not duty. And I'm a firm believer that if you prioritize your actions and live by design, you can create the life that you want. Today, I don't do anything but teach, research, and write, and travel around the world. That's what my objective was. And I learned to surround myself with people to do the rest.
What do you feel like? I mean, it's an amazing story. I mean, and again, I was meeting with one of our practice leads yesterday, and this resonates, where the simple answers, and again, it wasn't some crazy stroke of, it's a mix of opportunity and skill and other things as well too, but you had a plan, like he was very, like you said, you designed, what you wanted this thing to become. Where do you feel, because I think a lot of people listening to this, and just in general, I feel like we struggle to either stick to it, or we struggle. And obviously you've done a lot of work in this area around, empowerment and business mastery and other topics. What are the traits that you notice in the people that stick with this type of process and design versus people that tend to either just get stuck, they kind of keep repeating the same mistakes, et cetera? Are there things that you've noticed that the people that get through it, that break through, that really get to that next level, that they have in common?
Yes. Every human being lives by a set of priorities, a set of values that are unique to them, things that are most to least important in life. I call it the hierarchy of values. And anytime they're doing things that are highest on that list of values, they spontaneously are inspired from within to act. They don't require motivation. But anytime they do something low in their value, they require some sort of extrinsic reward to do it, or punishment if they don't do it, to keep them focused. You don't want to require motivation in life. I'm not a motivator. I'm not a motivational speaker. I don't promote motivation. It's a rhetorical persuasion using, punishment reward mentality. I'm interested in finding out what's intrinsically drives an individual that they can't wait to get up in the morning and do, that they spontaneously love doing, and find out what that is, and then make sure the job duties match that. So many times people infatuate with other people and they go, oh, I'd like to be like that. And they try to be somebody they're not. And they envy and imitate other people. And they try to be second to being somebody else instead of being first to being who they really are. And the authenticity is the key to longevity. And integrity is the integration. When you're wearing personas and masks all day long and exaggerating others and minimizing yourself, or exaggerating yourself and minimizing others, and caught in a judgment, which is an empty state of consciousness, where you're too proud or too humble to admit what you see in others inside you, you disempower yourself. And then you need rekindling by extrinsic motivation all the time. But when you find out what you really are inspired to do and stick with it and walk your talk and are doing something you can't wait to get up in the morning and do, and doing it in a way that has a sustainable, fair exchange with other people, you're going to build a brand of longevity. You're going to leave a legacy. And those individuals that do that consciously or unconsciously are the people that do profound things and wake up their extraordinary state. I believe there's a genius and an innovator and a really amazing individual in everyone if they just make sure that they target what that highest value is. That's why I have people go on my website to do the value determination process, free and complimentary, because I know the impact it'll have if they just take the time to find out what they're really committed to. A lot of entrepreneurs say, well, I want to be an entrepreneur, and they're going to go out and get after it. And there is parts of their business that inspire them, and there's other parts that they don't get inspired by. And if they don't learn to delegate that, they'll trap themselves, burn out, or get bored and think it's the business, when in fact it's just the job duties that they're doing that they haven't delegated, and they're trapped doing something that's not their skill. I was once really involved in studying administrations and management stuff. At this point, I'm more the speaker and teacher. But when I was into that, I studied every friggin' book that was out there. I went to mentorship, and I went to seminars. I learned everything. When you really love learning something, you want to learn about it. You're engaged in wanting to expand your awareness, and you're thirsty for it. But if you're having to do something like right now, if I had to do administrative and financial matters and all that, I would be bogged down. I wouldn't be an inspired individual at all. So it's not everything about the business that's going to inspire you, but finding that part of the business that your core competence is and excelling in that and surrounding yourself with people that love doing the rest and let them excel doing what they love helps build a team that's hard to stop. So I'm a firm believer that a lot of people get stuck as an entrepreneur. They're on the right track, but they end up burdening themselves, and they think that it costs money to delegate. If you hire somebody that's not engaged and you kind of move away from it out of avoidance, and then don't really have any engaged, inspired individual who would love to take it to the next level, you're going to end up having to micromanage them and frustrate yourself, and you add more burden, and then they're not engaged, and then you have to motivate them, and then it doesn't produce. But true delegation to high quality people doesn't cost. It pays, and it liberates, and it engages, and it helps the economy, and it gives job opportunities, and it helps raise families, and it helps put people in schools. I mean, there's so many inspiring things that come out of building the business that, if you liberate yourself from the things that you're not designed for and go and get into your core competence where you're inspired, now you're going to build momentum.
How do you get people over ego? Meaning, like, I think sometimes there can be I've got to do it all. I see this in I see a lot of this type of personality too, where it's like, again, like I feel like, or I need to, as a leader or an entrepreneur, executive, a CEO, a founder, and even people, the frontline manager, individuals, and how you manage your own life. I think there can be this thought of, well, I need to do it all, or I have to do it all, or I'm incompetent, or I'm not, I'm not adding value, etc. Like, how do you see people get past that? I really like some of the tactical advice that you gave, where it's like, just do the exercise, and the exercise will tell you, where you should be or not.
Anytime you hear yourself saying, I've got to, I have to, I must, I should, I ought to, I'm supposed to, or I need to, these are called imperatives. And they're not intrinsic drivers. They're an extrinsic drive from some external authority that you've subordinated to. You're comparing yourself to somebody else that's got a business. You think, I got to do it because they're doing it. And in the time trap, Albert McKinsey talked about all the obstacles for delegation. And anytime you're hearing those imperatives, you're going to have a self-depreciation, because that's not you.
Yeah.
Your identity revolves around what you value most. And your highest value is what you're inspired by. That's your identity. My highest value is teaching and learning, and today, and I'm a teacher. I don't try to make it anything else. I'm just an inspired teacher. So if you're doing something you're not inspired by that you feel you've got to do, you're automatically lowering the energy. And as you know, almost any business knows, if the energy's down, the business is down. Energy is part of the driving force and magnetism that draws business to them. Peter Lynch in the 90s, when he was writing One Up on Wall Street, he said, after I do my technical and quantitative analysis on a business, I also go and visit the business if it passes a certain criteria. And I go there to look for certain things in the people of the company at the headquarters. They have to be grateful for their job. I have to see people who are grateful for their job, love what they're doing, inspired by the vision, enthusiastically working, certain about their skill, and present with the customers or with whatever and whoever they're working with. If he sees that, he knows he can invest in that, and it's going to appreciate in value because there's appreciation amongst the team. And that is a very important component. And if you're not doing something that you would love to do and you're feeling trapped having to do it, you've got a brake on instead of a gas pedal.
Yeah.
And it's a sign you're doing something that's an injected value of some outer authority. And you're automatically designed to beat yourself up and self-depreciate. People think, well, I'm beating myself up. The beating yourself up and depreciation is not some flaw. It's a normal psychological feedback. Whenever we're not living by highest values, our brain and body does that to let us know we're not being authentic, to try to get us back to authenticity and to get to our core competence and to delegate and surround yourself with people who are also authentic. Because it's almost like the business is creating symptoms, trying to get everybody in there authentically in line with the right person on the bus, as Collins used to say. So when people are doing that, then we don't have those symptoms and we don't have self-depreciation. But self-depreciation is a feedback mechanism to guide us back to authenticity. It's trying to let us know that we're trying to be somebody we're not. We get trapped not delegating. We get trapped doing things because we think we're superior. We have an executive center in the forebrain, and we have in a subcortical area in the amygdala. The amygdala is a avoiding predator and seeking prey, and it's involved in instincts to avoid and impulses to seek. And then we have the executive center, which takes action, mitigates risk, takes action, executive function, strategic planning, and moves us forward. Anytime we're not doing something that's high in our values, the amygdala gets blood glucose and oxygen, and we end up having subjective biases, and we end up distracting ourselves and exaggerating ourselves or minimizing ourselves. Both of those throw us off because we're not being authentic to ourselves. The two things that undermine business is exaggeration of self and being proud, and then cocky, narcissistically thinking you know better than the customer and the employees, and then depreciating yourself altruistically, sacrificing to your employees or the customers. Both of them rob profits until you create symptoms to guide you back to sustainable, fair exchange where everybody's equal. You know, Bezos learned this indirectly. He was a customer-centric system by studying Sony, right? And he went out there and focused on the customer. But then all of a sudden, he's just knocked it out of the ballpark with the customer. But his employees, he wasn't concentrating that same effort on the employees. So they created a union to try to get that back into equilibrium. And once the union came about, now that's in equilibrium. But then the shareholder says, well, now that's robbed some of the margins. So they had to readjust some of the things to give the shareholders benefit. And then you find out that nature is creating symptoms in businesses to try to make sure that you are creating a sustainable, fair exchange with all the people involved, and people are moving towards the most efficient, effective expression of authenticity. That's all the symptoms business are trying to offer. If we see the symptoms of business through those eyes, it liberates us and it gives us a direction to what to do to solve it.
That is amazing. Like, I think some of the things we've talked about today, I really hope everyone listening goes back, re-listens to this kind of last 20, 30 minutes here, because I really feel like you've kind of made very easy and simple to kind of understand some of these limiting behaviors and limiting beliefs, and the things and the stories that we tell each other, where they come from, and some very tactical ways, which I love sharing, on what you can do to start down, a different path. And so, as we wrap up over the next, 10 minutes or so here, I want to talk about the new book, right? The 7 Secret Treasures, a transformational blueprint for a well-lived life. Talk a little bit. I mean, this is your you went through a tear where you had written, you're writing almost a book every year, every 2 years, but this is, your first new book in, last, call it, 10 years or 9, 10 years or so. Talk a little bit about the book and like what inspired you, and for those listening, we'll link to it as well too. What do you hope that people take away from it, and what inspired you to write it?
Well, it's interesting. I want to be forthright in how this book came about first, because I don't want to mislead people. I had a publishing company approach me and said, Dr. Demartini, we have been watching your videos online and we've seen you have many books out because I put out a lot of books. We would like to offer you a 10-book deal and have you do another 10 books with us. And I said, well, thank you. And what we'd like to do is we'd like to take certain select YouTube videos and interviews and podcasts you've done and collate those and turn those into books. And I said, well, thank you. That's lovely. I'm inspired by that. And I would then final edit it, make sure that it's, clean. And so the first one, there's a number of them coming out. One's the productivity factor. One's the resilient mind. This one is on the 7 secret treasures. There's to be 10 of them coming out. And we got another company that wants to do another 10. So there'll be 20 books out in the next 5 years, probably. But this book, The 7 Secret Treasures, is accessing and harnessing the power and potential that we have in each of the primary areas of life. See, when I was 18, I had a dream. I was watching David Carradine on Kung Fu. I don't know if you even remember that one, but he was talking to the Shaolin master, and they called him the master. And I thought, wow, I like that term. I want to be a master. And so I had a dream, and I wrote down that I wanted to be a master of my life, captain of my ship, master of my destiny when I was 18. I then said, what exactly does mastery mean? And then I broke life into 7 areas. I wanted to wake up and create original ideas that served and wake up my genius, innovation, creativity, and make original ideas that could serve the world. I wanted to create a business that was global. I wanted to create financial independence. I wanted to have a global family that we lived around the world. So I live on the world. My home's called the world.
Yeah.
I wanted to have a social influence and meet thousands of the movers and shakers in the world, which I've been blessed to do. I wanted to have a vital body. I'll be 68 in a few months, and I'm still firing up and still going more than most people. And I wanted to create some sort of movement that was inspiring to people, not a religion, there's plenty of those, but just an inspiring movement that people could catalyze their life to do something extraordinary with. And so I figure that the mastery of life is the mastery of all 7 areas. So the 7 secret treasures is how to access and awaken the greatest potential in each of those areas, which I have spent 50 years studying those areas and devouring the greatest minds in those areas through the history, and try to distill it down to the most important things a person can do, individual can do to excel in all of them. I don't want to excel in business and end up having a broken marriage if you can avoid it, right? And cutting your economics in half. And I want a wheel to roll, not have all the one spoke missing. So I want to teach people that. And so this book is dedicated for people who want to put a well-rounded life together and have fulfillment in all areas and excel in those areas. I believe it's possible. I'm doing it. Albert Einstein said the greatest teacher is exemplification. So I figured my achievement in life has nothing to do with what people say or do. It's everything about, am I living the thing that I'm setting out for? And if you're not living what you're setting out for, then you haven't achieved what it is that you're here for. So I'm a firm believer of that. And so that's what the 7 areas is about. This 7 secret treasures is how to do that.
I think I've got a million more questions, and I feel like we could keep going on this in particular for a long time. My last question, and I ask this kind of everyone, because again, there's just so much that you've talked about, I think, over the last, hour, 45 minutes, hour here, just that I really hope that people really, again, kind of just take stock. I feel like we live in this world of go, 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 do the next thing, and I feel like the more technology, et cetera, it's even trapping us more and more in this loop of just like more things to do. So you just keep putting your head down and doing more, and the Slack and email, and it continues that. A lot of what we talked about today, and what I hope everyone does is realize that you have to carve time to reflect. You have to carve time to really take a step back on a regular basis and say, what am I doing? Is this the most important? And I love this time trap activity. I think is going to be one that I hope people just replicate over and over again. Definitely going to link to the hierarchy of values as well too on the site. is taking time to reflect. You have to do that because all of you, I'm sure, are feeling different levels of anxiety or certain things, or maybe you are, or you fix some of these things. And so I really just encourage everyone to really think about this episode, go back and listen to some of these key points again, and carve time out for reflection, carve time out to do the exercise, carve time out to make sure that you're aligned, because a little bit of time, doing is not always getting things done. And many times you need to take that step back to take, a very monumental leap forward. So I really appreciated this, this conversation. And I think my listeners are going to get a ton out of this. What's next for you? When you think about kind of interesting phenomenon or interesting things that you see happening in the world or the zeitgeist, what are some things that get you really pumped? You're doing this book series. What are some things that you're like, I'm really excited for, this over the next, few years?
Well, I've differentiated excitement from inspiration.
Okay, I like that.
I learned from a guy named Bill Woods when I was in the late 80s. I used to go on his radio show and talk about finance, personal finance, and economics. And we both came to the conclusion that if you're excited, you probably screwed up. And if you're bored, you're probably on track. Because if you're excited, you probably got your dopamine running, and you're usually blind to the downsides or the upsides of what's going on, and you're not seeing things full-sidedly, both sides. So if you're strategically planning your objective and more centered, not excited. So I'm not a guy that's excited. I'm an inspired guy, and inspiration is different than excitement. So that's one. It's like a covalent exchanging of electrons in chemistry versus an ionic bond. Same kind of thing. So I'm not excited about, because I find those usually means that I'm blind to the downside, and I'm blind to the downsides, and I'm about to get broadsided, like a Fatal Attraction by Michael Douglas, that kind of thing. That's an excitement. But I'm inspired by the ability to continue. I've been doing it now 50 years, and I will continue to research. I'll continue to write, and I'll continue to share as long as this body is able to do that. They were interviewing Charlie Munger recently, and he's 98. And they asked him, are you going to ever take a break? You're going to do this? He just looked at him like, what an odd thing to ask. When you're on a mission to doing what you love to do, you do it until your body doesn't let you do it anymore. And so I don't feel overly stressed. I got a blood pressure of 95 over about 55. I'm in good shape. So I basically intend to continue to research, write, travel, and teach. Those are the four things. I've delegated everything else away. I jokingly said, people come up to me and says, you delegate about everything. And I said, yeah, I delegate everything. I said, with my girlfriend, my wife passed away. With my girlfriend, I said, look, if I was to have Hugh Jackman or George Clooney or Brad Pitt make love with you on my behalf, would you still love me? And every time my girlfriend said, I would love you even more. So delegation has some place in the equation. That's a joke. Now, don't take that serious.
Yeah, of course.
I wouldn't do that. But the point is that by delegating lower priority things and getting on with the things that are meaningful to you, you are looking forward each day to doing what you love to do. And so I will continue to build momentum towards what it is that I intend to do, and reach as many people as I can with the message, and research as much as I can, and learn as much as I can, and surround myself with the most adept individuals that I can to expedite that process, and leverage the knowledge that I can through every possible vehicle known in technology to reach the people, to help people fulfill their lives.
What a way to wrap up, man. I'm fired up. I mean, literally, if you're watching the video, you could see me looking down. I've got like little notes and sound bites, etc. So if I'm writing, and I'm doing this, I know the audience is really absorbing this. So I want to say a big, big, big thank you to you, for joining us, for sharing, some of the things that, are really, again, your life's design and the things that inspire you every day. And I hope everyone who listens to this leaves inspired and, takes that first step toward, again, go check out the links that we'll put in the show notes. Go, read the book. Go, go check out the website. download the hierarchy of values. Take one small step forward. John, I really want to thank you for joining me today. I really, really enjoyed it.
Thank you, Jake. Thank you very much for having me on, and thank you for your lovely questions and letting me share with your audience. It means a lot. Thank you.
All right. Well, thank you again. And thank you everyone for tuning in. And we will see you all next week on the Jake Dunlap Show. Thanks, everybody. Thank you everyone again for listening to another episode. If you are listening all the way to the end, I hope you have left a review. I hope that you make sure that you're following or subscribing on your favorite podcast listening apparatus. We'll be back next Thursday. And again, make sure to check out the Monday episodes as well, too. A lot of people are really enjoying these kind of mini episode Mondays. So make sure to tune in, subscribe, and leave a review.